What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will plan for today. Lance Taylor is going to join us. A lot of listeners, probably including you, because you grew up on Jocks, right?
Oh yeah, man. That is like probably one of the things, that and NCAA football, which is coming back, that made me like really fall in love with college football.
Yeah. So Lance is probably a staple for a lot of people who listen to the show, and if you also listen to the next round, you know Lance very, very well. But I can promise you that we got into some stuff that Lance has never talked about on his airwaves before. So really interesting conversation on all things gambling. In addition to some of that never heard stuff that he's ever talked about before. We talk over unders and all that as well. And then we've got Pitch Me, why your team has a path to Atlanta. But first, Will, we're talking about the 10 non-negotiables for the 2024 season.
Mm-hmm.
Last night, Lauren and I finished season 3 of The Bear. It is excellent. I won't spoil anything for you because, correct me if I'm wrong, you have not watched The Bear, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Season 2 is my personal favorite so far. Season 3 was still good. In season 3, Carmi, who's the main character, he comes up with his non-negotiables for this new restaurant that they're opening. And some of the non-negotiables are pretty vague. They're like time or focus, and others are a little bit more direct and defined. No repeat ingredients. Change the menu every day. There are rules, not so much goals, but rules essentially to live by. And unlike Carmi, I will not include hygiene. That's on you. I will say though, I don't know if this falls under hygiene, but don't be the person that's bombed from the moment that you arrive in a stadium to the moment that you leave. Just don't be that. And if you're aware of that, you're probably not the bomb person. But if you're not aware of it, that you probably are the bomb person. It's like if you don't know who the Michael Scott is in your office, shout out wearing him right now.
Yep.
Then you probably are the Michael Scott in your office. That's the way that works.
You said that like he was a designer. Like, what do you have on today, Michael Scott?
I do, always and forever. But yeah, the way that we're going to kind of break this down, the non-negotiables, I'm going to try not to preach too much here. It might come off a little bit preachy. I acknowledge that. And there are some similarities to what's been discussed in The Bear. I won't tell you to break down boxes. It's not what I'm here to do. But this is essentially a guideline for this upcoming season. And what a perfect time to do it ahead of media days next week, which is underway in the Big 12 and the Pac-12, Pac-2 sort of, which was so depressing.
The fact that they're still writing that out is my favorite thing in the world. Like, good for them. Like the sign that they tweeted out the other day that was like after dusk or something. Good for them, man. After hours, Pac-2 after hours is what they had.
We have a conference that's turned into a fireside chat. Unreal. What a time to be alive, man.
This is a podcast. This is not a conference. This Seriously. Is just two players just yucking it up. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the first one. We'll start with one that everybody can get on board with. Non-negotiable number 1, Will. No fall weddings. Unless you're in one. And if you're in one, have a plan. Okay? I've pushed back on this as an absolute of sorts because there are always extending circumstances. I do think there's a line here to be able to define. If your best friend is getting married, you can't tell them, you know what, it's Kentucky, South Carolina week. Have a nice life. No, don't do that. It's not worth it. Okay. And if that makes me casual or whatever, okay. All right, fine. Your best friend's counting on you. So you're going to have long-term ramifications of missing that one. Whereas missing Kentucky, South Carolina in real time won't really change your life in the grand scheme of things. And again, have a plan. Yeah. You can go dark, which that means everything. Like delete apps off of your phone, tell people in your orbit not to give you any sort of updates, record the game, watch it when you get home. If you can do that, more power to you. Or the more popular option, if you are at a wedding that you're in, it's a fall Saturday, sneak score updates during the wedding. Have it recorded when you watch, when you go home and you can watch it there. If your team loses, you won't want to watch. And if it wins, great. Then you can have a stress-free victory to be able to watch. You didn't feel like you missed the craziest, biggest game of the season or something like that. So I do think there is some positive there. But if it's your buddy from college that you haven't spoken to in like 3 years and it's an out-of-town wedding,
I'll make it 4.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question though, because I was thinking about this in my own life with John, who does not care about sports. If your best friend, like, so everyone, what do you think our sickos percentage of listeners is? Like 50, 40, what percent do you think our sickos listen to this podcast? In the off season too, it's higher. Yeah.
Yeah, like 70 to
Yeah.
80.
So if John were to get married in, the fall,
It's your best
like if
friend.
you're,
You got
yeah,
it.
no, but I'm saying that means the bride hates me. Like,
No. The bride does not care. The bride does not care what you think whatsoever.
I know, but I'm saying that I know John would be like, well, Will's going to be working that weekend. Like, we got to lock in, we got to do our thing. And she'd be like, nope, don't care. So I'm just saying,
Nope.
just something to think about. See, this is why I'm asking you, because you're a more mature adult than me. My friends are all married. This is probably why, because I think crazy things like that. I'm just saying that if your whole friend group are sickos, that's where I'm going with that. If your whole friend group are sickos, and there's just like one factor, kind of like if the groom himself is miserable because he's a sicko, that's one thing. But like, I'm trying to imagine me at a wedding where I'm the only sicko. That would be John's case. Yeah, I actually, you know what? That's right. I would be at that. That's actually, yeah, that's a good point, because the bride, it would be moving a whole wedding for me at that point, which wouldn't be fair. But if the friend group are sickos, now I'm asking questions.
Yeah, look, and full disclosure here, I got married opening weekend of college football, a wedding that was planned before I had this job. But before you give me a 1-star review and tell me I'm a casual, we did get married on a Sunday. We were watching college football for a good chunk of the day on Saturday as well, opening weekend. And I even remember that was the very famous, that Sunday, we're at my college bar, shout out Kilroy's, and we're watching Notre Dame, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Texas is back, folks.
Yep.
The stickiest floor you can possibly imagine. That we're just, my entire family is there. We're just having
So
a good
you,
time.
like me, have watched Brian Kelly lose on a Sunday. Good. Okay.
Hell yeah. Of course we have. Yeah. So look, and the only 2 other weddings that I've been to, my best friend got married in fall. Shout out my guy Bronson. Got married during Cupcake Week. One of my other really good friends, Emily, got married during Cupcake Week. I've been fortunate, okay? I'm admitting this. But draw that line right now, okay? And that's non-negotiable number 1, something that is going to be a topic of conversation. It doesn't have to be as absolute as some make it out to be. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I'm with you. I kind of like that was my wrap up on that. Is I think we've already talked about all the extenuating circumstances.
okay, number 2. No negative energy at tailgates. I don't want any of that. If you are the person at the tailgate telling me how this sport isn't any fun anymore because of NIL, just take a lap. Just take a lap. Okay. I'm not telling you to get lost. Take a lap. Just go walk it off. Cooler heads will prevail. Just ask yourself during that walk around, not all tailgate walks are created differently. You can't exactly walk at the Grove. It's more of a shuffle the feet and just find a space to be able to breathe. But if you are in that spot and if you're that riled up in that moment, just take a walk, come back, get some air. Okay. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Everybody's going to be able to enjoy this setting. But if you're there being that damper, not on board with that. The vibes of a tailgate are sacred, okay? You can be mad and frustrated during a game in a stadium, but at a tailgate, that is a place of camaraderie. It is a place of hopium. It is not a place to bellyache about how spoiled college athletes are. If you want to say those things, which you can, okay, I'm not telling you you can't, do so from the comfort of your own home, or do so, with Twitter fingers, message boards, something like that. Something that, so I do not have my good time ruined by your gripe with this specific thing. If you are the person at the tailgate who launches into some rant about how messed up college football is, you deserve to be left mid-sentence.
Yeah, and I will put one caveat on that too, which is that if you're not a fan of the team, like if I'm at a Georgia tailgate and I'm an LSU fan, let's say LSU loses in the noon window, that is nobody's problem. Like, do not bring that up. Do not be sad. Point. That's a really common one that I'll see, where there was like a random Kansas State fan at the Georgia tailgate I went to. They like lost to Mizzou, and I was like, okay, like I'm not that I'm dumping on that person, but I'm like, it's not about that. Like the best place to watch your team lose is at a different tailgate, because nobody but you cares. So you can literally just, as long as somebody makes a joke, and if they do, you could just say, hey, I'm at your tailgate having a great time, don't want to talk about it. So having your team lose is kind of a blessing in that way, because if it was going to happen no matter where you were, might as well be around a group of people who do not care.
The vibe is so important. It truly is. And if you are ruining it with your stuff and your business, man, that is that's just not fun because you only get a certain amount of space there too, and it's like you can't. It's not like you're at a massive party or something like that. If you want to be at that specific tailgate, it's very hard to avoid that specific person. So just make note of that. All right, number 3. Spoken about this before. We're gonna say it again because apparently some folks need to be reminded. Find someone other than Cam Newton for your comparison. Okay, that's all I ask. I'll die on this hill. I will. If your only thought is to compare a player to Cam, you should rethink that thought. Okay? Even Gus Malzahn said at Big 12 Media Days that physically KJ Jefferson is the closest thing to Cam Newton that he's had.
Yeah.
We have to stop that because it's just not right. Okay? And look, trust me, I am the number one KJ supporter, and I am telling you this is not right. And I know what you're thinking. If anyone can make that comp, it's Gus, right? Nope. Because that's the same dude who told us Jeremy Johnson's speed was similar to Cam's, and boy, it wasn't.
I was about to say, all you got to say is KJ is who I thought Jeremy Johnson was.
I mean, that's a little too far. We don't need to do that. All right, I'm not going that far. Just keep Cam's name out of your mouth, okay? I hate Cam comparisons because it never makes sense to just take one piece of his game out and compare it to other people. The part of Cam that makes him so unbelievable as a college player is all the parts working at the same time, okay? I go around saying like, hey, Jesus and I both had beards. What's the point of that?
Yep.
We're still somehow like in this window of it's kind of in recent memory, so a lot of people have seen it. Like if you're old enough, if you're even 25, you have probably good memories of Cam, or maybe if you're an Alabama fan, LSU fan, not so great at memories, but memories nonetheless, vivid enough memories. And some might think Cam can happen again. I'm not saying that it never will, but eventually we kind of stopped comparing people to Herschel, right? We just decided, let's not do that. Bo was the only one that ever made any sense, and that's about it. Just because you are a big black quarterback who can run, you should not be compared to Cam Newton, period. Okay?
Yeah.
Non-negotiable number 3.
We've talked about it. I think that this is a version of my thing about the Burrow 2019 graphics that show up on ESPN every single year. It's, Trask, it's Mac Jones, it's whoever is
Jaden Daniels last year.
Jaden Daniels is a little bit different because he's at LSU, right?
Yeah.
Like you're actually compared to LSU quarterbacks. Like that you kind of have to do. But if it's like, if it's somebody random, don't do that. Same deal here. So it's like, just let people be great. I think that's the easy thing here is like, you could be the first Carson Beck. You don't need to be the second whatever. It's just make your own story, and it's lazy.
Yeah, there's you want to compare Carson Beck to Matt Stafford, Aaron Murray. Yeah. All right, fine.
Same record books, yeah.
No disrespect to my guy Aaron. All right, no disrespect whatsoever. But like, Cam is different, different tier. Okay, he is an untouchable tier as far as I'm concerned. Number 4, no September Heismans. We shouldn't even declare a leader in the Heisman race in September. Okay, and I realize it's a content game. It's something to talk about. I get it. It's unique in college football though because those schedules in the first 4 weeks can vary so much. They vary so much more in September than they do by season's end. And sometimes guys are putting up 400 yards in the first half against Towson or something like that, or Mercer, and that throws things off. I promise that we'll have plenty of time to discuss the legitimacy of Heisman candidates. We will do it on the show. Okay. So I don't want to hear about Heisman leaders unless, and here's the one caveat, unless we're talking about it with gambling odds. That's the only time where I think I will bring that up in September. If we have Bear Felica on talking about it, I love getting his perspective. Hey, when did you get in on this guy? What did you see? Like, how much did that change after, this random game against Houston or something wherein, this guy's numbers weren't particularly good. Then did you jump all over a guy that had better odds, longer odds than he did in the preseason, something like that. We're talking about value. We're talking about stuff that can put money in people's pockets. We're not speaking in absolutes when we do that. So yeah, just no September Heismans. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, all the conversation about Colorado last year, right? Like, we could have just been
Yep.
spared. Like, there were plenty of respect. I saw a respected reporter, I'm not going to say their name, but that was like, Heisman today, it's going to be Travis Hunter, and then it's going to be Shedeur Sanders. Now, think about how that reality would play out. You're talking about Colorado being a playoff team. You're talking about Colorado going undefeated. If that is legitimately what you think that two members of that team would be there, what are you talking about? And like, that's always been my thing. Yeah, I mean, shout out to Ja'Cory Harris, Geno Smith, who has, I guess, resurrected his career. But yeah, there have been plenty of people that are just like, all right, look, this will be a joke later on and make this kid's career harder.
Tate Forcier. We're going to really go back. Ooh.
Yep.
Boy, yeah, many memories of the Tate Forcier Heisman conversation. Manziel before Manziel, some were saying. Sorry, that's disrespectful to Johnny. I take that back.
There will only be one Johnny Manziel for sure as well.
I'm bleeping that one out for sure.
Yeah.
All right, number 5. Adapt or die to the 12-team playoff.
Mm-hmm.
You can still be a bigger fan of the BCS or even the Bowl Alliance, Bowl Coalition. People don't talk about those as much.
The Coley Matrix, get that out of here, but everything else is fine.
Exactly. I'm not telling you how you should feel about that specifically. I am saying there's nothing that you or I can do to change this. And this is just the system. This is the world that we live in with college football right now. And if you're telling yourself that you're not going to be lined up, ready to go for that first weekend of the playoff, which is what's that national holiday, December 21st. I want to say that day is that Saturday, where we're going to have games from like noon all the way through, probably closing at midnight of playoff football, like 12 consecutive hours of it after a Friday night playoff game. Like if you're telling yourself that you're just going to avoid that because you don't like this system, it's a money grab. Okay, fine. Do that. You're not part of this. You're not part of what a real college football fan is, in my opinion. Okay. You can still like one thing and enjoy another. I know that's a crazy concept because everything has to be defined black or white, but let's also adapt expectations. Okay. Going 10-2 is different now than it was before. It is. Going 10-2 means that you get your resume dissected. That's the way that this works. Let's adapt correctly. And not by wasting our time on 8-4 teams or if, oh my gosh, 7-4 team. Unless, of course, you have a path to play in a conference championship game. That obviously changes things. You still have playoff odds in your favor, actually, if you still have a path to a conference championship. So you can be
or if you are the University of Florida and you have found a way to win 8 games. I saw a graphic the other day. I might have brought this up out here.
Kelly Ford.
It was like tiers of like how many wins you could have in Florida was just by itself at 8. I was like, I agree with that. If Florida wins 8 games, that means they beat like 5 ranked teams. That's fair.
Yeah, I talked with Kelly Ford about that as well, who does really, really great work. Somebody I've been wanting to get on the show for a while and need to. I don't know why I just haven't, but he does all the matrix stuff. I actually disagree with him a little bit on the amount of 9-3 teams that would be considered because I do think 10 wins is going to be, that mark. But again, I will adapt my expectations if that plays out. And if there are a lot of those 9-3 teams that are kind of getting in, we're like, okay, this is, we can extend this out to some of the 3-loss teams that get left out of conference championship. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have to change a little bit. We can maybe stop getting into the weeds so much about strength of losses. I don't know how much that's going to be discussed by the selection committee. We can embrace the chaos. We can understand that there will be more discussion about the playoff than ever before. We can also appreciate how cool it'll be to have these home playoff games and how unique of a site that's going to be. So yeah, just let's just tweak how we view the playoff, even if we are BCS supporters or something like that.
Yes, and I think this is related to the vibes thing. It's like, hey, man, we're all going to watch this playoff. All right. At the end of the day, you're going to be there. If you want to loudly protest or whatever, good for you. Keep that out of here. I don't care. And the other part of it, too, the one thing I'll add on that, if you are the fan of a power team like Ohio State, Alabama, whatever, and your rival beats you and you just think to yourself, well, playoffs, like if that's your comeback, get out of here with that. Like, well, the 12 team, we're still playoff teams. So I don't know why this guy's celebrating. Like, the games still matter, guys. Like, that's the other part of it is like, don't make everything about the playoff, but then don't be like, oh, well, this stupid new playoff, just enjoy the season. It's kind of the take here.
Yeah, it's play the long game. Understand that if your rival gets you, like, yeah, that's why Oklahoma fans can still talk trash to Texas. Okay.
Yep.
You can still talk trash to Texas when you won that matchup last year. And yeah, Texas had a better season overall than Oklahoma, but if you're just under the impression that nothing else matters, then to me, you're probably looking at that just obviously through a little bit too narrow of a lens. Number 6, appreciate tradition, but embrace new rivalries. Key thing to remember here.
Mhm.
Tons of conference movement we have this year. No core four conference is the same as it was last year. Everyone's got new faces. Okay. I
Mhm.
love that. I do. And I love tradition. I love all those things. But embracing this new world, these new rivalries, it could mean, planning a road trip to be able to visit a stadium you've never really had a reason to go to before. Maybe
Mhm.
that means creating a burner account on Twitter and trolling a new fan base.
Yeah.
Shout out UCF fans. Perhaps you're, maybe like embracing a new rivalry means that you lean into things like horns down. Like you just
Mhm.
do that all the time. Maybe you've never had a reason to hate Texas and you decide this year, okay, every picture I take where I am at an SEC football game, I'm going to be doing the horns now. And
Mhm.
that's just going to be the thing that I'm going to do this year. There are tons of ways in which you can embrace new rivalries. It'll take time to be able to get used to these new surroundings. I'm still not used to the fact that Stanford is in the ACC and SMU is in the ACC. It's a weird world that we're living in, but there's nothing we can do to change it. So let's embrace the new rivalries.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. It's the fact we'll see this there will be about one of these a year where you'll find out like this team in the West Coast has like never played Penn State or whatever, and you're just kind of like how and you can see that with your own team sometimes where you're like there's a couple of LSU that they don't come to my mind right now, but you'll be like it's the first time we ever played these guys. This is crazy that we've kind of been around together. So that is a really exciting element of it's always been with bowl games. But see, that's the thing is like a lot of the bowl games the last like 8 or so years really didn't honestly matter as much. So if you have these like long histories, you have like 3 or 4 bowl wins that stack up. It's like So now that's like actually exciting thing about the playoff is like you're gonna get to see your team play other teams. You're gonna experience it with new fan bases. It's like a weird example of this is like when they found out what happened when they married Iowa and LSU together. They were like, we got to keep doing this. We got to keep this rules. They have nothing really in common but the love of calling yellow gold and drinking, but that's all they needed.
They have less in common than ever now in a post Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark world, I would
That's
argue.
true. Yeah, that's what we need. We need a bowl game. That's going to be like the new Pepsi ad. We're just going to have LSU and Iowa playing a bowl game, and they're going to be shaking hands like Kendall Jenner or whatever.
That's could definitely see that playing out. But yeah, those two fan bases, I'm sure, have embraced their rivalry and many others. BYU and Utah playing in the same conference. Now you get an excuse to hate one another. No, I'm kidding. They've hated one another forever, but you get what I'm saying here. Number 7.
And one thing the Big 12 has done a good job of too is they've been very creative with trash talk. They're like, we're gonna find new words to call y'all. Like this old stuff that y'all had. We're gonna like Oklahoma State and UCF. What are they gonna say to each other? Let's figure it out.
Civil conflict. Some are saying
Yeah,
greatest idea in human history was the civil conflict.
Well, if you make up a rivalry, make sure you win it like once. Like that's the key. You gotta win the rivalry because like he was trying to give out the trophy, nobody cared. Yeah.
I don't know. Just make it up and figure the rest out later and hope that you have a good enough story to be able to tell, just like Bob Diaco did. So
yeah. Send an email before you create the trophy. Before we put down the deposit, I think would be smart.
Yeah, like you don't need a newsletter, just an email.
Yeah.
That'll do. That'll be
If
fun.
I give you this trophy, would you accept it and be proud or would you laugh at me? Because that's the worst. Anyway.
Yeah. To quote George Strait, check yes or no. Okay.
Yes.
What you got to do. Number 7. Don't get got by fake quotes. A lot of them in college football, man, more than ever. And the blue checks that do this that are not really blue checks, but hey, that's the app that's been created. Always click on the profile, see the followers. I shouldn't have to explain this. If it's a quote, it should either be coming from an actual news source or there should be video of said quote. And try and find that. If it's just like this random blue check that you don't follow and you've never actually seen on Twitter before, eyebrow raised, have a bit of skepticism. It's never been tougher to kind of figure that stuff out. Okay. People, some just like throwing that stuff out there. And for the ones that do it, you're a loser. I mean, it's one thing to have a burner and a troll and opposing fan base, but like to put words to people like that impacts lives and stuff like that. Yep. So it's just not worth it. Just be aware of be aware of quote tweeting something maybe you see on IG that you share, that's aggregated from sites that do nothing but aggregate and don't actually travel anywhere or do anything like that. So yeah, sorry, that's just a bit of a pet peeve of mine. But again, these are my non-negotiables. So I think that one plays.
Here's the beautiful thing about college football, guys. Mike Gundy will tell you he's driven drunk thousands of times on air. Coach O will say "Roll Tide FU" on Instagram Live. You really don't need to go invent stuff that these people are saying. It's crazy.
True.
You can just search their names and you will find a video of college football personalities saying the strangest thing you've ever seen about like they don't believe in space or like whatever. It just let it come to you. Don't go seeking it because it'll find you. Like again, why was I caring about Mike Gundy the other day? Because he said the craziest thing. Well, yeah, that's the craziest thing he said, which is pretty impressive. It's like a really hard top 5 for him, but he's in there. So these people will keep talking, bless their hearts.
Yeah, we don't need to create this content. It's out there. It exists. Let's just take it as it comes. All right. We don't need to be swinging for the fences every single time. Trust me, that fastball is coming middle half. We can knock it out of the park. We all can. Number 8. Do not call it the 2025 national championship. Even in this new playoff, do not do it. This is the 2024 season, okay? Do not confuse yourself and the rest of us by calling it the 2025 national championship. I cannot stand this. They do it with the marketing with college football playoff. I hate it. The vast majority of teams will not play a game once the calendar turns to 2025. Like 95% of FBS teams, their season is over. Why do we do this? This is not the NBA season, which has a true split. The NFL season does Roman numerals for their Super Bowl, so it doesn't have to deal with this. College basketball, that's fine. You're playing the bulk of your meaningful games after the new year. You can call that the following year championship. Nothing wrong with that. But in college football, all we do is confuse people, and it's so stupid. If I say to you, Will, what happened in the 1995 Orange Bowl, that should be related to the 1995 season, not what happened in 1994. And you have to remember, was that game played on New Year's Day? That is the dumbest thing in the world, and we need to get away from this. I hate the marketing. Nobody's going to be confused if you just call it the season that it's in. I'm getting too fired up.
Yeah, I mean, this is one, like we always joke about, like, yeah, we're so different, but they're real key tenements, I think, are pretty. So this is one of the 2 or I peeped at this third in a row where it's like, wow, like, yeah, because that bothers me so much. And the last one, I may have said this one here. This is one of my least favorite people is when someone will get one of these questions wrong, and you're like, oh yeah, like Tebow, that was like what, like 06 Natty, 07 Heisman, 08 Natty, and they're like, well, no, it was 09. You're like, no, it's not. It was 08. Well, no, it was played in 09, dude. It's like, no, you were just wrong. Like, yeah.
2008, Florida won the national championship, okay? They did not win the national championship in 2009. I get that the game was technically played in 2009. Tell me how many of those other games, those 13 games, were played in 2009. All right.
Yeah. And this actually gets even more confusing because I know it's like it might be a Big J journo thing. It might be a marketing thing. It could be either of our faults. I don't know. But they try to this is the whatever. Here's the problem. When you have like the Orange Bowl and the Citrus Bowl in different years, now you've really created a level of confusion that's like, wait, this is the 23 Citrus Bowl. But the 24 Orange Bowl is the same season.
Well, if you look on their Wikipedias of like Citrus Bowl, Orange Bowl, like you can find years in which if you just scroll, it'll have the same year. It'll be like 2022 Orange Bowl, and then you go to the left for the previous year, and it's like 2022 Orange Bowl. What are we doing?
What are we doing?
Makes no sense. All right, number 9. Don't let Georgia football players borrow your car.
Good advice.
I don't think I need to explain this one. Pretty obvious, right? Especially after most recent events. We can move past that. Even Georgia fans, you're not disagreeing with me on this one. You know it. You get it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's close with this, Will. Most important one. Most important non-negotiable. No bad Saturdays. I realize that we cannot control wins and losses. Despite what underwear we wear, despite what pregame drink we have, despite where we sit on the couch, we cannot control wins and losses. So what do I mean? Your team loses in devastating fashion. You, person that is on the wrong end of that, you need to end your day on a positive. You grab a delicious dinner with your significant other. Go out with the boys. You go out with the girls. You fire up a little college football 25. You turn off your phone. You enjoy some quality time with the kids. You root for that Big 12 team that I told you to get on the bandwagon for. All right. You got a chance to be able to figure it out. Maybe you can wait till after September, kind of wait and see how things play out. I'll give you permission to do that. You do something positive. Okay. You feel the pain of a tough loss, and then you do something positive in your life to prevent yourself from thinking at the end of the day, this was a bad Saturday. Alternatively, okay, this is the last resort that we're talking about. If your team's just a total doormat and it's a lost season that you just can't watch anymore, and you're like, man, I just can't do college football this Saturday. It hurts too much This is taking too much out of me to be able to do this. Okay, that's fine. Find positive things to do, but savor this. Okay, savor these seasons. Savor these Saturdays. We only get so many fall Saturdays on this earth. Okay, make this one, this year, this fall, as enjoyable as it can be. I don't care if your team is the most mid 6-6 boring team on the face of the earth. Find ways to make sure that you don't have bad Saturdays. Because you know what? Bad day of college football, still a good day anywhere else. All right? We can control this. And I need to be a bigger advocate of no bad Saturdays. No bad fall Saturdays is what we mean here. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But an important thing to remember.
Yeah. So I am fully on board. I do have a specific question that I can't find an answer to. What is happening to the Pac-12 after dark? Is that going to be like, who gets that time slot now? Because my only caveat before I become positive is that if what used to be the Pac-12 after dark, I have to see the Big Ten on
Big
CBS.
12. No, it's like the Big 12. The Big 12 is taking
that
some
would
of
be
those
perfect.
slots.
Maybe
Mountain West still has some of those like CBS. What's that? Like the CBS's extra network. You know what I'm talking
CBS
about?
Sportsnet, yeah.
CBS Sportsnet. I was going to say CBS Sports Line. That's the internet. No, CBS Sports Net. Yeah, the Pac-12 After Dark is not just it's just being repurposed.
Boom.
That's the thing to remember.
So then, boom, I'm super happy. That was my only thing. I was like, dang, if I got to see the Big Ten at night, I'm going to be sad. But no, I mean, that's so now that we've got kind of like there will be goofy late night games. I'm so right there with you, man. It's like I think that I learned this lesson between the 23 and the 24 season. The 22 and the 23 season, because like after LSU lost to FSU on a Sunday, I was sad, and I always joke about like, oh, I gotta find something else to make me happy because it won't be this. And I was in New Orleans, and I wasted a night being sad and drinking scotch, and I should have just gone out and not cared. But I was gripping the concept of I have to root for a bad Brian Kelly team. Kind of fair. That's one of the few. If you ever found yourself rooting for a bad Brian Kelly team, you now can be sad than anybody else. But like that was a little bit different. But the next year, LSU got blown out, and I was partying by the fourth quarter. I was like, whatever. I'm here with my boys. We're all safe. We're all on a trip. We're gonna have a great time. So like that's the key. Is like there's really even an upset loss. Like, remember, the playoff is here, guys. Any of these sad Saturdays that ruin your season, they can't. It's up to your team. And guess what? If your team loses a second or third time, that's your team's fault. No team can get lucky against your team 3 times now. It's really not possible. Let's ask DeBoer. They whooped them 3 times. And so, so point being, like it's every just as we could say, oh, it's sad. Every win matters less. Hey. Your losses matter less too. So that's the key. What is the thrill of victory really better than the agony of defeat in college football? Probably not to this point. I think that having that one weekend that can ruin your whole season is why college football has been solid. Now you don't have to deal with that. You have to accept the fact that it's up to your team, potentially the committee, but if you're an SEC team, more of your team, right? That's the key, is that you're going to get that help. So your team has the path. You got to go give them a stern talking to, but it's on them. It's not the refs. It's not all this stuff. They gave us our 3rd loss, man. This is a great season. Get out of here.
I think that's a good point to remember. That in this era, whether you like it or not, and I'm not saying you have to like it, but there is that margin for error. And we will be talking about your team differently after losses. Now, again, there are still going to be losses that knock you out of playoff contention. That could still happen. The scenario that I've mapped out, if Oklahoma has this great start in the SEC and then loses out on getting into the 12-team playoff by losing that regular season finale at LSU, that's going to be a really, really difficult day for Oklahoma if that were to play out. And it might be a difficult thing to think to yourself, what am I going to do now? What is this life? Well, hard day, brutal day that would be. You're also still in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Right. And last I checked, that's still, if you are an Oklahoma fan making that trip, I'm saying, you would still be in a really good spot to have yourself a good time that night. And again, I'm not saying this is easy, okay? And it's different for me talking about this because I'm not the one with the dog in the fight. I fully acknowledge that. But I'm telling people that Will is a great example of this because I've watched Will go through some tough times the last 3 years with his team, specifically watching his team play defense. And the moments, 4 years.
You've seen me go through some tough times starting in 2020. Let's start there. 2020 was bad. 21 was bad. These last 2 years have been awesome.
Yeah, true. I have seen Will go through some tough times. And Will is as diehard as it gets. And Will is a great example of like how you can turn your day around, how you can appreciate these things. I've had some tough days recently. I'll be honest with the people. I've had some tough moments where I've just been like, man, I felt like nothing went right today. And you look up at the end of the day and you're like, all right, what am I gonna do? Let's go. We're gonna go grab Chick-fil-A or something. I'm gonna we're gonna sit down. We're gonna watch a new show. We're gonna have a drink. We're gonna I'm going to go run over to Culver's or something like that. We're going to do something positive. I'm going to turn off my phone. We're going to play with Claire. We're going to go for a walk, whatever it may be. Finding that positive, man. Something that college football fans need to do because these losses are crushing. I totally get that, but we have ways, and maybe a new video game would be a really nice source for all of these people. Hey, it didn't go my way on the field. This is what I can control. Let's get her done. Let's go win a national championship.
Yep, exactly. I posted a story the other day that was talking about like the amount of time, like unlock this memory that I saw. It was like I would watch LSU score 10 points or 17 points and lose to like Arkansas or whatever, and then I would just fire up NCAA, whatever the year was, and like put in the backup quarterback and just run the air raid and just be like in a happier place. If I coached LSU, this is what I would do, and it's cathartic. It makes you feel great. And on a related note, man, because that just opened up a bank of memories. Like the other day, like let's call it 2 months ago, I was like getting in my car and my podcast like shuffled to a random episode, and it was like one of the first podcasts I did, but it was after the UCLA loss, the LSU UCLA loss.
21,
yeah, it was so bad, and I was like, this defense looks like they all just met each other in a parking lot, and I was like going through it, it's just furious, and I was like, yeah, I mean, like that's the thing is that like week one used to not really matter as much. Like we've seen teams get over it, right? And like we've talked about, like it's pretty hard to be a great team and lose like week one, but now it's like, yeah, like we were talking about, it's like, hey, if Brian Kelly loses on Sunday this year, it's going to be the least impactful Sunday loss of his career ever. So yeah, I think that's just like super, super cool. And then like to your point, it's like these are fun places. If you can't have fun in a college town, I mean, we've all done the move where we like, okay, well, maybe we haven't all done this. Maybe I'm a weirdo for doing this, but it's like if you are at a rival team's stadium and your team wins, I always like, keep my gear on, respectful or whatever. I've definitely done the thing where I'm like, I'm going to go change shirts and just be a nobody because I don't feel like getting heckled all night. And like that's the key is that if you're an Oklahoma fan and you're at the LSU game, just throw on like a, a Hurley shirt and just go hang out at a bar and you're going to have a great time. It doesn't do you anything to have drunk Cajuns yelling at you. I promise you. You don't get a Medal of Honor for that, or I would have lots.
I've done it before too, like being in that spot of like a rival fan base, and you're going out afterwards, and like your team just got its teeth kicked in.
Yep.
And sometimes like you just lean into it with whoever you're with, and I've been there before, and it's like, yeah, man, you got us. Like I got nothing.
Yep.
But I'm gonna enjoy myself. I'm gonna have a good time. Yeah, the return of this college football video game and the playoff expanding, more reason than ever. Just and your fall Saturdays on a positive. No bad fall Saturdays. All right, let's kick to Lance Taylor. We talk about his extremely unique college football hustle life in the 90s, as well as his favorite over-unders for this season. And then we close with a little bit of Lincoln Riley talk as well. So here's LT. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the next round's Lance Taylor, the founder of Lance's Lock, the place that, look, everybody should go. You're looking to get a little bit of skin in the game. You need somebody that's been in it from all different varieties of gambling. We were just talking about this before you came on. I had no idea, Lance. Before we dig into your over-unders and stuff, we're going to talk college football bets and all that stuff. You used to be a bookie in Tuscaloosa? Yeah. How did I not know this?
Well, I mean, I think it was public knowledge kind of around here where you originate out of Birmingham, and I'll still run into people, hey, man, you took my money back in, 1997 or whatever. I started out as a freshman in Tuscaloosa as a very bad gambler. And I love to play 3-team parlays because I was like, I'll play a $25 parlay. And the 6-to-1 return on that's pretty good, not knowing that it's almost impossible to really hit. Very difficult to hit one game, Connor, much less three. So after losing my money that entire fall, the next year I was like, you know what? I got with a couple of guys. I was like, let's put all of our summer money that we've earned working at home or working from restaurants, landscaping, whatever it was. Let's book and let's see how this thing goes. And I'll be honest with you, we never had a losing season, ever. That's how hard it is to gamble and win. We got some tricky spots. And 2003, and this is when I was gone from Tuscaloosa. I was actually working at WJOX. I was in Baton Rouge for Dennis Franchione and Nick Saban. And I'll never forget, I got a call from my younger brother. He said, everybody is on Alabama in this game. And I think Alabama was like a 3-point underdog. And I remember I was actually at the game in Tiger Stadium. It was one of the coldest experiences ever. But he called me up and he's like, based on these numbers, if we don't throw this off, and I was a guy that was always against throwing off, we're going to have to close down shop. And I felt great about LSU. I was like, I love LSU plus the 3 or minus the 3, whatever it was that night. And one of my other partners was with me at the game. We were like, we're not throwing off. And Alabama won the game. I think it was 24-0. And I just remember heading back to Bourbon Street that night, and we were like, I don't know what we're going to do. And we found a way. We took out some loans. We were able to pay that off. And we got the same situation like a year after that, and we didn't throw off. We ended up winning that one. But that was the only time it was really, really tricky where we almost went out of business.
My head just went to rounders of that moment. Which is
I never dealt with a Teddy KGB, though. You know, I never was on the and that was kind of the thing about it, like organized crime. They're big into, gambling and racketeering and everything. But, at that level, I did have some pretty amazing ways that I did things, though, which I don't know if we want to get into that. But it was all on the up and up. And, everybody was gambling, and it was a way to make a little extra money back in the day.
Okay, so the craziest way you had to collect.
Okay.
Obviously you're not going to name names.
Yeah. And I've never told this story before. And it's funny. We just don't ever really talk about it up here. I really don't care. I think statute of limitations is probably up. But there was one of my former counselors who's now retired. She worked at the University of Alabama. She would give me class schedules. So if I had a guy, because, this is back before cell phones. So this is, mid to or early to mid 1990s. Like I don't know about you. My first cell phone, I think, was 1998, maybe. So we didn't have cell phones at all. And so if you called somebody's home phone, they were obviously screening it. They weren't there, whatever. So she would give me, hey, he's going to be in the biology building, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12:30 to 1:45 or whatever. I'd show up at class. I remember. And by the way, there was never any violence. There was some talking sometimes, never any violence. But I remember at Galette's, a lot of people are familiar with that place. The Pikes would hang out there on Friday afternoons. And when there were Pikes that owed me money, I would just go to Galette's. And I would be like, you're drinking and shooting pool in here. Let's go to the ATM. And 99% of the time, it wasn't a problem. I was just one of those. Persistency was the easiest way to collect. And that's one of the reasons I think I've had success in sales. Not afraid to ask for money. And especially if it's my money.
That's incredible. So wait a minute. Let me, I feel like we should just do a separate podcast about this, but
we can. So, I'm good with it.
So if you're talking about the ways, and remember, this is before all these states had legalized gambling and stuff like that, before it became such a mainstream part. It's kind of crazy to think that ESPN Bet is now a thing. There are so many different ways into it. But like you being this physical presence and just essentially stalking an area to be like, you owe me my money, man. I still can't picture you in that role. And maybe that's just because I've only known you for the last, 3 years. But you, like, in that role, like, did you have a specific outfit you would show up in and be like, I mean, business, we're gonna do this?
I will tell you, it was funny, though. So when I left in 95, I kept it going. And I moved from Tuscaloosa to Birmingham, where we are now. But I remember towards the late 90s and into the early 2000s, when I would go to Tuscaloosa, and I had a couple of different guys before my younger brother ended up going to school there, and he took it over for a few years. I had some different guys at different fraternities, and I would go in town once a week. And the way it worked is we collected on Tuesday, we paid out on Thursdays. So normally I would go into town on Wednesday or Thursday, and I would get with certain guys and get all our money that was owed and find out what wasn't. And problems that they had, I would go set up meetings with those people and go meet with them. And I do remember there was a time where I guess me at 30 looked a lot different than a 20 or 21-year-old. And I do remember wearing like the Carlito's Way leather jacket and just, having them sit in my car and just talk to them about, like, I didn't force you to, put $100 on Clemson that led to you doubling down on the Vikings on a Monday night, and now you're down $2,000. It's not my problem. I always ask them this question: if you won the 2,000, you came on Thursday and expected to get paid, right? And they're like, absolutely. Well, I expect you, now that you've lost this, it works both ways. And most of the kids were really good about it. I had one kid, and another thing, I would get their phone numbers. I'd always call them over Christmas break, because a lot of these kids, some wouldn't come back. They would disappear after that first semester, because college football was where it was, where we made the majority of our money. But I remember getting this kid's number from somebody else that worked at the university. And boy, how bad would the lawsuits be if all this stuff really, really came out? But I got this kid's number and I called him, and his dad apparently was an FBI agent. So his dad calls me back, and his dad's like, you need to forget, and I still remember the kid's name. I remember the amount he owed. You need to forget my kid ever gambled with you, or I will have your operation shut down. And I remember telling him, and I wasn't being a smart ass, but I was like, what kind of lesson are you teaching your kid that he owes this money? And now you, in working for the government, you're going to threaten to shut down the operation. I was like, I'll back off, but I think it's a bad lesson. But I had a lot of those. And I had one of my, I say there was never violence. I will say I had a guy when I was once out that went to collect from me, and he happened to hit some kid that was obviously a big cokehead, and they ended up having a pretty bad altercation. And that was one of the reasons I told you earlier, one of the reasons I got out of the game. But when I was on my way back from the beach, it was in early June, I think it was. And this money was from the fall before. But my guy called me and he's like, hey, this dude went to his place to collect. He basically whipped my ass. And I was like, well, when you've got your collectors, your enforcers that are getting beat up by college kids, probably time to shut it down.
I think that's for the best, probably.
Yeah.
And
I'll tell you this, all the money I made, I basically turned around and lost it. I mean, it was you always hear that the drug dealer, don't get high on your own supply. I was the bookmaker that would, knowing better, why not just count your winnings? I would still sit there and gamble it all away. So it basically was coming in one hand and going out the other.
What a perfect way to set you up for this, talking about the Lance's locks of the year. We can call these locks of the year because you have overs and unders that you love, that you sent me these yesterday. So I want to just dig into all these. You've got 5 favorite overs and 5 favorite unders that you like. Let's start with the overs that you love here. And I'll push back on you a little bit because that's what we do whenever we're on one another's show or something like that. So you have Nebraska over 7 wins, SMU over 8 wins, Miami over 9 wins, Virginia Tech over 8 wins, Auburn over 7 wins. Let's start with Auburn. Let's start in your neck of the woods here. I have Auburn going 8-4, so I'm on board with you on this one. Why did that number of 7 wins stand out to you? And please just tell me because you guys went golfing with Hugh Freeze and you're feeling the good vibes.
That was not it. I am a Hugh Freeze fan. I thought it was a really good hire. When a lot of Auburn fans believed it was going to be Lane Kiffin. Once it was Hugh Freeze, I was like, I think you got the better end of the deal. Now that's hard to say with Lane Kiffin coming off an 11-win season last year, but I do like Hugh Freeze, and the number's actually 7.5. And I think when you and I talked about that, they try to put a hook on a lot of these where you won't have the push situation. I do think we have some hard numbers, but the Auburn number is 7.5. You go back last year, it was 6.5, and how they didn't get that 7th win with New Mexico State and the Alabama game. I mean, that was. You're talking about a bad beat. If you had a ticket on the over 6.5 last year and Auburn goes 6-7, but I look at Hugh Freeze and I think he's a really good coach. And I don't know where you fall on Hugh Freeze, but in year 2, I think great coaches make big time jumps. And you look at Hugh Freeze in his year 2s at Lambeth, he goes from 8 wins in year 1 to 12 wins. Ole Miss just 7 to 8, so just a 1-win improvement. But Liberty goes 8 wins to 10 wins. No LSU, no Ole Miss on this schedule. I think they're going to be favored in 8 or 9 games. There's some big swing games, Oklahoma at home, at Missouri, at Kentucky, A&M, 5 straight home games to start the season. They really need to, I think they've got to be 4-1 coming out of September to get this number, but I fully expect them to be 4-1 coming out of September.
Yeah, that Oklahoma game is huge.
Yeah.
Really, really big for that over under. You're buying the Miami hype. Why?
I love me some Cam Ward. I mean, you think about the great story, and I told this the other day. I was doing a podcast for Lance's Lock, and this is a kid that only averaged 14 passing attempts his senior year in high school. They were running the old wing T offense, and so he didn't get offers. The incarnate Word is the only offer he got, and once he gets there, he completely blows up. And you're talking about a guy that's got almost 14,000 career passing yards, 119 total touchdowns. You bring in Damian Martinez, a running back a lot of people don't really know about, that played in that Jonathan Smith grinded out offense. I think he's going to be a physical presence, taking a little pressure off of Cam Ward. And year 3 for Mario Cristobal, I don't know how you feel, Connor, but this guy is 12-13. And you go back to the 7-6 last year, 4 of the 6 losses were by 1 possession. I just think they're going to be so improved. They could be favored in up to 11 games. They've got major swing games at Florida. That's going to be a massive one, because I know we're going to get to Gators in a little bit. Virginia Tech, at Louisville, and Florida State. But I think this is going to be a really good Canes team. I expect them to win 10 games this year. I think they got a good chance of going to a college football playoff.
If they lose that one in the Swamp, though, that might be your game of the year, because we'll get to Florida with the unders here.
That scares me, because when I try to project, and a lot of times they'll be like, hey, what is that number going to be coming up? And I did see an early number, and I think Miami might have been a 1, 2, 3-point favorite. I fully expect everybody will be on the Miami Hurricanes in that game. And Florida might be a little better than advertised. I mean, the schedule is completely brutal, which we will get to. But yeah, gotta get that game won. It's massive.
The first one you listed here, Nebraska over 7 wins. That feels I've talked about my time spent in Nebraska, my 2.5 years there, and it's changed my perspective certainly on just college football as a whole, and understanding the way that certain teams are talked about when they're on the rise as opposed to others. But getting to 7 wins, getting to 8 wins actually is what you're talking about here.
Yeah, 7.5 is the number.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be worried about that from a betting perspective, just because the variability of having a true freshman starting quarterback who's probably going to have some ebbs and flows, as decorated as Dylan Raiola is, and then Marcus Satterfield as an OC is maddening in my opinion. And that's for a team that's got 7 consecutive losing seasons. This has to just be faith in Matt Rule, that Matt Rule is going to take, just like you talked about with Hugh Freeze, that year 2 jump.
Yeah, it's in Matt Rule we trust. You look at Temple, 2 wins to 6 wins in year 2. Baylor from 1 win to 7 wins in year 2. And I think you're going to get that kind of jump. 5-7 last year. I think when you look at this, they could be favored in their first 7 games. I think eventually they could be favored in 8 or 9 games this year. True freshman quarterback. But you go back, you look at the offense. I think we would all agree maybe the worst offense in the Power 5 was Iowa.
Yep.
But I think there was only like a 2 or 3 point differential between this Nebraska offense. And, they've got a tough close. You got to make hay early, because they close at Ohio State, at USC, Wisconsin, and at Iowa. So if you hadn't gotten this done by late October, you're probably in trouble. But I do like the over 7.5, and it really is about Matt Rule.
You're just going to be sitting there watching these 1-score games, just pulling your hair out. Get ready for it. Was it like 3-21 in 1-score games? Tom Fornelli had that stat of all the 1-score game. Nebraska just can't win a 1-score game. It's impossible.
It's so painful. And I'll tell you, another big game early on is Colorado, because you go back to Colorado last year, and Nebraska just couldn't do anything offensively against that terrible Colorado defense. And they hung around in the first half, and then Colorado ended up pulling away. I fully expect Nebraska not only to be favored, I think they beat Colorado in week 2, which I know we'll get to Colorado as well here.
Okay, let's talk about those teams. Your favorite unders here. You have Mizzou at under 9 wins. You have FSU at under 9 wins. UNC under 7 wins. You're Muff at Jeff Collins. Colorado under 5 wins, and then Florida under 5 wins. Let's start with Florida, because again, like the opener against Miami is really important, and under 5 wins, I don't think there's any question. Billy Napier would be gone in that scenario. They would pay that buyout. I guess I slightly disagree with this, just because I have Florida going 6-6 and actually starting 5-0 to at least get to that not necessarily breaking through just yet. But tell me where you're at with the Gators, besides just the fact that obviously the schedule is incredibly daunting.
Well, you go back last year, Connor, they were 5-2 to open the season. They lost 5 straight. So they're sitting at 5-7. He is squarely on a hot seat. This is one of the more difficult schedules we've ever seen in the history of college football, at least going into a season on paper. The total is actually 5.5. I go back last year when we were at SEC Media Days and you joined us, in our room and we talked about a lot of different things. And I remember talking about Graham Mertz. And I remember specifically talking to Jacob Hester about this kid. And a lot of people believe going into last year when you ranked 1 through 14 in the SEC, a lot of people believe based on what we didn't see at Wisconsin that Mertz maybe was number 13 or 14 in the pecking order.
And he
goes up. He completes 73% of his passes, only turns it over 3 times. And they still go 5-7. They could be underdogs in 9 games. I'm going to say they're going to be favored in 5 and 7 games are going to be underdogs. Major swing game, as we mentioned, against Miami to open it up. They go to Mississippi State. I know Jeff Lebby, year 1. I still think that's a losable game. Central Florida at home, losable game. Kentucky, really tough swing games. I've got them at 5-7 again, which I think probably gets Napier fired. But the Miami game is the one to circle. I mean, we're putting a lot of long-term season tickets on the line in week 1 when you go under Florida and over Miami.
Yeah, that's what this is all going to come down to, that game, which is just going to be sweltering. I don't imagine you're going to be in person for that one when it's probably going to be like 99 degrees at kickoff.
Yeah, I don't know about you, man. The older I get, the more less likely I am to attend a game. I probably go to 2 or 3 games in person a year. I'd rather sit in the AC, watch a bunch of games on TV, and not worry about it. But not a chance in hell. I've been to the Swamp 5-6 times, way too hot.
I got into a fight with my brother about this because he's like, man, like you need to be able to tough through the weather. Like, I would go to a game at Lambeau or Buffalo or something like that. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't want to pay that type of money to be uncomfortable and wanting something to end. And look, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I can't necessarily stomach ridiculously cold weather. And it's same on the other end. Like when it's squelched, it's just that brutal Florida heat that time of year. Like, no, I'd rather just sit at home and watch all the games as opposed to just that one and be uncomfortable doing it. So, yeah, right there with you on that one.
Yeah, and I do think if I'm going the hottest, I said the coldest I ever was, and I really believe was in Baton Rouge for that Alabama, that November game where Dennis Franchione beat Saban 24-0, I think was the final score. But the hottest I've ever been, I think, was a Florida-Tennessee game in the Swamp. And it's just like add 20 degrees on top of whatever it is in Gainesville in September.
The Swamp is the most appropriately named sports venue there possibly
is. It really is.
It really is.
It really is.
Okay, Mizzou, under 9 wins. That's not going to go over very well with our crowd. That fan base in general is feeling good right now. And Eli Drinkwitz himself is feeling really good because obviously you're coming off of a 10-2 season with tons of offensive firepower returning. In my opinion, best returning player in the SEC in Luther Burden III. And the schedule is really favorable. So that's going against public money probably, I would guess. Are you not necessarily a drink guy, or what's pushing the under for you?
I've said this, I've kind of given this analogy about Drink. He looks like the guy where the wife and kids are walking up the boardwalk in front of him and he's carrying all of the sand buckets and the beach chairs and he's burnt.
He's a dad. Yeah.
And he's just getting bossed around. He's henpecked by that wife. But you look at Drink, 5 wins in 2020. There was no expectation. Then 6 wins, and then they bust out with 11 wins last year. Now that number really is ballooned up to 9.5. Last year, 2023, their win total was 6.5. They flew over with the 11 wins. Now it jumps 3 games. And I just don't know if they've got staying power. I agree with you on the schedule. I like Brady Cook. I think he's a really, really good quarterback. We did our top 5 quarterbacks returning in the SEC. I had him number 5. I agree with you on Luther Burden III. I think he is the best player in the SEC, and I think he could have just an incredible year. But you look at the schedule, they might be favored in 10 games. They go to A&M and to Alabama. Those are games they won't be favored in. But the swing games, Auburn, Oklahoma, and at South Carolina. I just think Missouri's going to trip up and lose a game they shouldn't. I think, worst case, they're 8-4. I've got them at 9-3. And I play the under just because I don't think Missouri can handle the expectations. And this, coming off 11 wins last year with what they've got coming back offensively, their expectation is college football playoff or bust.
As it should be. I agree. And I still was asking those same questions and had them going 8-4. So I'm right there with you on that one. I think you're the most anti-Colorado person that I know.
I thought that was Tom Luganville, at least last year. Deion went after him.
Yeah.
It's not that. I thought it was a great story last September. And by the way, their win total last year was 3.5. They actually went over the 3.5. But they start 3-0. They were the story of college football, and then they lose 8 of 9 coming down the stretch. My thing is, Shedeur Sanders is a great quarterback, and especially when you watched him last year, Connor, because this guy threw for over 3,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, only 3 picks, but he was sacked 52 times. How he survived the season last year is a miracle in itself. I know the offensive line is going to be a little bit better, but I think the Big 12 is going to be much better than advertised. People are talking about the ACC is going to be better this year. I think when you look at the Big 12, I think Utah, Kansas State, Kansas, and Oklahoma State all have a legitimate shot of winning that conference. I think all are really good teams. They better win early when you look at this Colorado schedule. And again, Nebraska is going to be a big swing game there. But they go to Texas Tech. They've got Utah at Kansas, Oklahoma State, but circle at Nebraska. Again, for me, because I've got Nebraska going under and Colorado going under and Nebraska going over. Week 2 in Lincoln is a big game for me.
Here's why you're great at what you do. When I came on with you guys a few months ago, I think the first thing you asked me was who will have more wins this year, Colorado or Vandy? And I laughed you out of the room. And I was like, how could you say that? Blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, no, think about it. And look at the schedule. And then you kind of look at the schedule and you realize a couple of the gimme games that Vandy has that Colorado doesn't necessarily have. And I thought about it more and more. And I thought about it for the last 4 months since you brought that up the first time. And I'm like, gosh, is Vandy going to win more games than Colorado this year? It's not that crazy.
What is the realistic expectation? I know Dion's going to tell you, hey, we're playing for a Big 12 championship. And I've heard some guys like Klatt that think they're going to be really good. They lost a ton, and they brought a ton in from the portal. I just don't know how that works. We saw it work sometimes for John Calipari at Kentucky, and then we saw some disaster seasons. And I think this being Shedeur and Shiloh's last season, I just don't know if Dion's going to be coaching again next year. I know he says he's going to be long-term. I just don't know if I believe it. And I don't know how many Colorado fans are going to want him if he goes 4-8 again this year. But I think 4 is kind of the number there. I think you're getting value under the 5.5.
The underrated thing, too, is the loss of Sean Lewis. That move and what went down in December or November, where all of a sudden Dion's like, the best thing about my team, I'm just gonna abandon that. I don't know that they're gonna be able to call offensive plays. I
think the first month of the season, you were looking at Sean Lewis as maybe the Broyles Award winner last year. They opened 3-0 because their offense was popping, and as good as Shedeur and Travis Hunter were, and Travis got hurt in the Colorado State game. Everybody was talking about Sean Lewis.
And, go figure. He ends up getting a head coaching gig at San Diego State. And
he's in a better spot now. So that 1-year bridge really did work out for him.
Yeah, the Kent State to Colorado OC move, everybody's kind of looking at it going dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And, he has definitely made it a better move for himself. Okay, last one for you. And it's not gambling related. You can make it gambling related if you want to, but this is more of just kind of a big picture thing since you are the most LA person I know, I think, with the exception of my cousin who's lived there for a really long time. But USC. You guys talked to Bruce Feldman about this, but I'm curious what your take is on Lincoln Riley, considering that it feels like he has zero momentum going into year 3 after he's been struggling in recruiting. He's getting called out by his former AD. He's getting outed for trying to duck the LSU matchup. What do you make of him going into this season, and what do you think his next 5 years look like?
Connor, when you look overall at the body of work in 2 years, it's better than what you got consistently from Clay Helton. 11-3, I don't think they were that good, and they ended up getting exposed at the end of the year against Utah. But you had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and 11 wins in year 1. It's a good year. It's a good solid A. But then you back it up 8-5, and you don't think the defense can be any worse, and they give it 35 points per game. Deanton Lynn comes in now, Anthony Lynn's kid. He is well respected. I think the defense has got to be better. You've got Barry Alexander and Eric Gentry and some guys to build it around. I just don't know what you're going to get offensively. I trust Lincoln Riley to get the offense right. I can't remember him ever having a bad quarterback. And Miller Moss, the small sample size we saw against Louisville, he goes 372 and 6 touchdowns. So, I don't think you're going to get that year or week in, week out. But Zachariah Branch is going to be really good. Didn't get enough touches, only 40 offensive touches last year, had just as many on special teams. Got to get the ball in his hands. And I think Woody Marks, transfer from Mississippi State, in that backfield is going to be really good. So I think the good for USC is there's not a lot of expectation going into this season. Their win total is 7.5. It was 9.5 last year. Obviously goes under at 8-5. I think they're going to be favored in 8 games. I think they win 8 or 9. And I think if you're a USC fan in year one of the Big Ten, you can build on that.
The counterpoint, the doomsday scenario for USC is Lincoln Riley having this like 7-5 type season, which that'd be the under because I think it's 7.5.
Yeah, but I could see a 7-5.
Yeah, like if that happens, all this traveling in the Big Ten, like having to learn all these new teams and stuff, where it feels like you're kind of starting over, and he looks around and goes like, "Why did I sign up to do this again?" And then the Cowboys thing, the timing of that with Mike McCarthy, that everybody's been talking about forever with Lincoln Riley, like if that actually lines up to be able to happen, like I don't know what the odds would be of that scenario playing out, but it feels like it's better than 0.
Well, and I don't know, like Lincoln Riley personally, like where he is on some different things, but talking to somebody that covered USC football last year, they said that the environment was more NFL. It was more Louis. It was more Prada. They were worried. NIL really, really took over that program. At least this is what he told me. And, after a loss in college football, it should hit these guys hard because – it's a little bit different when we're talking about 12-team playoff now, but back in the day, you lose a couple of games, you're out of it. I mean, for a team like USC, the expectation should be championship or bust. But those players were walking out, smiling, laughing. It was like the losses weren't that big of a deal. And you just hope that that's not the entire culture. It's not just about a money grab when it comes to USC. But, they've had some weird recruiting things going on recently with, verbals that have decided to do a 180 and go elsewhere. And I don't know. I mean, I like Lincoln Riley. I think it's a fun style to watch. The defense cannot be any worse. I know I said that last year, but I think it will be better, and we'll see. But I think 8 or 9 wins will get a little momentum going into 2025.
Yeah, that's why the Caleb Williams thing when he was crying after that game last year. I know I'm biased as a Bears fan, but like when Caleb Williams is like crying after a loss, I made fun of him for thinking like they still had playoff chances. But I'm like, at the same time, USC needs more of that. They need more guys that take it that seriously.
Right.
I think this is kind of a life or death deal as opposed to like, I got paid, whatever. Who really cares?
By the way, I do think Caleb Williams is going to be really good for the Bears. I really do. I know it is one of the more polarizing things, but with that said, I think Justin Fields was going to be good.
Yeah, I did too for a while. And then I realized, am I saying this because he looks cool on the internet? Or am I saying this because I think he can actually lead them to the places they want to go? And then the fact that the market was what it was a little bit tough to stomach of being like, oh, yeah, okay, then they probably made the right decision in the long run. But I mean, I love Justin Fields. I want him to work out so badly. But my life as a Bears fan now, and you're not mocking me at all. Like as a Rams fan who's like seen his team, do the whole like, oh, we're gonna get to a Super Bowl, we're gonna win a Super Bowl, like that whole thing, right? Like you're not coming from that place.
No. Look, I went a decade. Steven Jackson was one of the best running backs to never play in the postseason. I guess he played one game in the postseason for the Rams. But old number 39 from Oregon State, had such a great career. He would have been a Hall of Famer if those Rams teams would have been better. He played behind some awful offensive lines. My point is, I can't remember the last time I missed a Rams game. Like, I have seen every snap, every play for years and years and years. And I go back, I started getting Sunday Ticket in 1997. And so I suffered all of those years. And the worst Rams loss to me that I can remember was in the 2003 divisional game where Steve Smith walked it off in St. Louis against the Rams in overtime. Because I believe that Mark Bulger team, they would have matched up the next week with Atlanta, and Carolina ended up with Jake Delhomme going to the Super Bowl that year. But that was a tough one to stomach. But there was nothing like 1999 when the Rams won their first championship. I told you the Rams they're a third kid to me.
That would be like your strawberry wine football season, like just go back and just like such an innocent place. Like everything seems so pure and fun, like the first time and all this. And you just long for those days sometimes.
But I'll tell you, maybe more fulfilling was the recent Super Bowl 56 where they beat the Bengals, because that playoff run, they smashed the Cardinals that first opener. They go to Tampa. They were dominating the game. Cam Akers fumbles on the goal line right before half. Brady leads this amazing comeback. And then, final possession, game tied. Stafford hits Cooper Kupp on that amazing, and they end up, Matt Gay kicks field goal. They win. They go on NFC Championship. If San Fran holds on to an interception, that game's over. They're able to come back, win that. That was so fulfilling because where I am in life, before that season started, I said, if you can give me one Rams Super Bowl in the rest of my lifetime, I'll take it, the championship. And I went that entire postseason without having a sip during a game, which is amazing for me. Yeah.
Dude, you got to get like sunflower seeds or something like that to calm the nerves.
I paced nonstop. I've got my basement that I watch all the Rams games in. That's all I did. And I've had people, they're like, well, why aren't you just sober? Because I'm a superstitious guy. Why aren't you just sober for Rams games moving forward? And I hadn't tried it since, and they haven't really had a lot of success since. So maybe I should go back to that. I don't know.
There we go. Okay, I probably won't. Last one for you. Probably won't be sober at karaoke next week. You did Big Papa last year. What's the play this year?
Well, I didn't plan on doing Big Papa. I know that's more of y'all's thing, and I'm trying to remember how that went down. I know Barrett Salih is really big into that. I had a guy that was with us. We had gone to another party before where we saw you guys at. You told us where you were going to be. I didn't plan on going over there. I went to another place called Pushing Daisies, a little tequila bar across the street. And the guy said, I told him, if you can find Big Papa, I will come do it. And the next thing I know, I got a text, it's queued up, it's ready to go. So I ran over there, kind of butchered that, but I'll definitely hang out with you guys this year. Looking forward to it. And we'll see what happens. California love this time, maybe. I don't know. Regulate.
We go from Biggie to Tupac. Is that allowed? Statute of limitations. It's up. It's all good.
I embrace and love both. Like most white men my age, the eternal debate on who was the best rapper, Biggie or Tupac. I love both. So,
spoken like a true LA guy through and through. Love it, man. Hey, looking forward to seeing you guys next week in Dallas. Appreciate you doing this, man.
Yeah, and last year, remember we had Barclays vodka on set. We were giving out bottles of vodka. We've got some really cool surprises for guests this year.
So Charles giving out the vodka on set.
No. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, this is going to be bigger and better, though. I'm telling you, Connor, you're going to love it.
That's a tease, man. That's a tease. Lance, appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Always fun.
Pitch me. We're talking today why your team has a path to Atlanta. Okay, here's the thing. We in the media are very bad at this whole predicting an SEC champ thing. And you might think that's because media is really dumb. And all right, I get it. But at the same time, last year, think about this. Georgia's coming off 2 consecutive national championships. Georgia was the pick to win the SEC. Did Georgia win the SEC? No. Was anybody really pushing back on that at the time? No. Remember how I said last year? Look at the way that this is going to play. This is going to play out one of two ways. Either Georgia's going to win this and go on to win a national championship, or it's going to be a year in which Bama's not picked to win, and then Bama's going to find a way to win the SEC championship because that's just what Bama has always done. And for in each of the last 4 times that Bama wasn't picked to win the SEC championship, Bama won the SEC championship. That goes back to 2009. Okay, that's crazy. So it's this fear that if you don't pick Bama, you're automatically going to look like an idiot. And we in the media, we feel that. We feel that pressure. I've talked about that before, but I don't know that it's as easy as everyone thinks it is. Okay, I don't think it truly is. And since we have started this whole SEC championship media voting thing back in 1992, we in the media have only gotten this right 9 out of 32 times. Not great. Wow. 281 batting average. I've only been voting since 2018, so I won't take all those L's, but I'll take some.
What's your record?
My record, I think I've gotten it right twice.
Yeah.
I think
Was it Bama, Georgia both times?
Yeah, I definitely didn't have LSU winning in 19. I think I had Bama winning in 21, and then I had Bama winning in 18. So yeah, I think I've gotten it twice right. And then 22, who did I have in 22? I don't think I picked Georgia to win in 22. Did I? I don't know. 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, you would have had to be really high on Bama because obviously LSU won in the West, so that would have been there. You know what I'm saying? That would have messed up the bracket by itself.
I probably picked Bama to win in 22, because Bryce Young, Will Anderson, preseason
Yep.
number 1 was overwhelming for that team. So yeah, that's definitely possible. So I'm saying this at the top because it's a hard thing to do. And I'm not going to hate on people that are saying, "Low, my team's got a path." And, you're wrong to think this team doesn't have a path. By the way, Georgia will be my pick. Okay. I don't really need to be pitched on Georgia's path to Atlanta. I said on the last podcast why I'm picking Georgia to win a national championship, why I think they're going to accomplish history by winning 3 and 4 years. So we don't necessarily need to dig into that a whole lot. And again, we're just talking about getting to Atlanta. This is the path to Atlanta. This doesn't have to be winning an SEC championship. As we know, getting to Atlanta, a little bit different now. Divisionless SEC for the first time since we've had an SEC championship. TBD on the tiebreakers. Hopefully I'll be able to ask Sankey about that. We'll wait and see. So anything that we need to kind of get out ahead of before we discuss path to Atlanta? Because we've talked most difficult schedule. We've talked, most favorable schedule and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. I think for me, it's going to be picking anyone but my team. So this works out perfectly. Actually, I would, off of that getting to Atlanta tip, let's start with the second one.
Let's start with this. This is from Marcel Germain. Marcel says, from Athens, drove on Route 78 for half a mile, merge onto 29 for 6 miles. Take Route 316 for about 40 miles, then follow I-85 south for 20 miles before taking exit 84. That's the path to Atlanta.
Yep.
Can't argue with that. I hope
Correct.
that Marcel just knew that and didn't actually have to look that up or GPS it or anything like that. It's just so ingrained into Georgia fans because remember, Georgia can play as many as 3 games in that stadium this year, just like they did 2 years ago because they opened the season there. If they play in the SEC championship, that'd be there. And the national championship is at Mercedes-Benz as well. Georgia fans should know that exact route to Atlanta. That's pretty good.
That's actually like one of the best answers because it's so factual. It's like we go there all the time, dude. And to your point, we both are gonna pick them to go, so it's like correct. You really don't need to think too hard about this one.
The only pushback is, what if there's a better route? We just don't know it.
Gotta get a ways. How about that? Think about that.
I took some back roads back from when I was at the Georgia parade after the 21 title. Yes, it's the 21 title, not the 22 title that I'm talking about. Georgia's first national championship, right?
Yep.
And I flew up for the day. I flew back like the same day, and I drove back from Athens to Atlanta, and I took some back roads, man. Like places I had never been to before, something like that. I don't know why. I don't know how crazy traffic was that day. And I'm here to say that route was not faster than the one that Marcel Germain just described.
There you go.
All right, let's go to this one from Paul Reich. Paul says, Godzilla and Mothra emerge from the Pacific Ocean.
Okay.
The 2 monsters step on all SEC teams except Vandy and Mississippi State. The 2 are unable to locate Starkville, and Japanese action movie heroes or monsters would likely not know that Vandy is an SEC team. That is how Vandy makes it to Atlanta. That or the apocalypse. Either one of those is really good. Anything short of that? I mean, they did win 2 games in SEC play a couple years ago. Played Kentucky tough. Yep. No, that's it. That's the path.
I think we have 2 equally correct takes to start off with.
Something so direct and literal, and then something also not so much literal, a fantasy more so. I don't even want to call that science fiction. That's just fantasy at that point.
This is like House of the Dragon. Like, it's like, well, okay, what if we find the dragon eggs? Then we can get to Atlanta that way. So, yeah, I love the real fans. Like, that's my favorite. Like, the fans are, like, real about it. They're like, yeah. So I think both of those are very strong starts because it's like there's nothing worse than a fan of a bad team who will not admit that he cheers for a bad team and that the whole world's out to get him. Like, I know, like, plenty of Miami fans like that just think that the world is stopping them from being good. It's like, no, like, you're going to need some stuff to go your way, dude.
I love the most underrated part about that is Paul decided that Godzilla was not enough. Godzilla needed a tag team partner for Vandy. For Vandy. Hug a Vandy fan.
Mm-hmm.
Seth Callahan says, Mizzou, 1 loss in Tuscaloosa. Luther Burden is a Heisman finalist. You could look at that schedule and say 11-1. You can. I personally am not. But that is the only game on the schedule that you look at for this Mizzou team and you say, nope, not going to happen. And you know what? I mean, I don't think that Mizzou goes into Tuscaloosa and wins that football game. But if Alabama is suddenly that 8-4 team, that game totally changes the complexion. I don't really like this pitch as much from Seth because he left out the game at UMass, which...
If you talked about that, you'd be in the conversation.
Yeah, we don't overlook that one. You want to talk about a sleeper game. There will people that will be sleeping in the bleachers at that football game. And it'll be tough to get the boys riled up for that one.
If you see UMass's AD at the casino, leave. That's all I gotta say.
If Ryan Bamford is smoking a cigar on the sidelines of this game, Mizzou, you've already lost. He's going to find a way to talk to the officials, and it's just, you're taking that L. Your only L will not just be in Tuscaloosa. Mark my words. Ryan Bamford's fingerprints will be all over that game.
And I will say, too, guys, great responses this week. Okay, we had I forgot what it was a couple weeks ago, but people were like giving these big scenarios and not talking about their team. It was about the rivals. Everyone here gave it their team and how they would get there. So great job. 100% correct.
Love this. This is what we want with Pitch Me.
Mm-hmm.
Brady Stucker 09 says, for Kentucky, it's go 10-2 with wins over Georgia, Ole Miss, Florida, and the 2 losses to Texas and Tennessee. Kentucky's schedule is tough, man. It is really, really tough. Wins over Georgia. Wins over Georgia, Ole Miss, Florida. Beating Florida has not become this hurdle that it used to be. Of course, everybody knows that. Okay, 3 consecutive wins. This is not so much that, oh, that's just an automatic L. They'll find a way to be able to lose that game. So I'm not going to talk you out of that one. We'll talk you out of that one. I won't even talk you out of the Ole Miss thing because Ole Miss and Kentucky have played pretty competitively. That game a couple of years ago, that was it a top 10 matchup? It was like 7 versus 9 or something like that with the Will Levis, two turnovers late in that one. Big game in Oxford that was. The Georgia one's what I can't get past. I just can't. And it's tough because I think if you're a Kentucky fan, you told yourself a few years ago, well, this is probably because of the style that we play. There's only so much upside. If you're going to try and beat teams in the trenches, you're never going to beat Georgia in the trenches. You got to be able to innovate. You got to be able to scheme better. You got to do this, and this. And then you've still seen the way that it's played out. And last year, Stoops gets up to the podium and does the infamous pony up comment. And you're kind of realizing, it's not just as simple as scheme. It's not just as simple as Jimmy's and Joe's. This is kind of all of it. And it's not particularly close at this point. So I can't fully get on board with that. And going 10-2, remember how historic that is for Kentucky, which, the 2 winning seasons in SEC play since the Jimmy Carter administration. 10-2 for Kentucky. That's a tough sell. Brady's digging deep, I can tell, but I don't even know if he feels that one in his chest.
Yeah, see, but I think this is real though, right? Because it's like, it's almost like if you're in that situation, you would rather you would rather your losses be to the worst teams, right? So like you got to beat the Georgia, the Ole Miss that are going to start off with that preseason love. Texas is there too, I get it, but like a loss to Tennessee is not the worst thing in the world, even though they'll probably be a good enough team where it won't be embarrassing. So yeah, I think this is actually a pretty logical thing, and I'm gonna go peep really quick. This is why I love getting like stuff from just like different fan bases because we've talked about the schedule a little bit, but just want to float this out there. I've brought this up ad nauseum whenever we talked about Mark Stoops and expectations. Calipari's gone now, so there's just you to hate, dog. So that's the key. Like, if you got a hard schedule this year, and just let you know, it's the pony up thing ain't gonna work this year. But at the same time, you have a partner that Mark Pope would be nice to you. So you guys may not have beef, so that's a great opportunity. So you have your SWOT analysis is done for you, Kentucky. Point being there, yeah, I mean, this could be a solid enough. That's the thing. Like, Kentucky's been a talented team the last couple of years. Like, even though they've had like a couple of struggles here and there, the ways that they've been struggling have not really made a ton of sense objectively. We talked about like the big blue wall kind of imploding, and the quarterbacks have been talented but just not putting it all together. So yeah, I mean, a strong season from Kentucky wouldn't really be that surprising, honestly, when you really like look at their personnel. But to his point, or to your point, both of y'all's points, the schedules are hard, and you just can't have a repeat of last year. So Kentucky's actually, I'm looking at this pretty interesting team next year.
Kentucky's never the team you want to pencil in for 10-2.
Yep.
They're
Yep,
just
because
not,
they will
man.
get to 9 wins in the weirdest way you've ever seen. Yep.
Well, like with a bowl game or something like that, they would probably it'd be more like an 8-4 regular season or
Yep.
something like that. But when you're giving them that kind of love in the preseason, that's usually where they falter.
Yeah.
Okay, let's end with this one. Excuse me, from Alex W540. Alex says none. There is no path for Arkansas. That's as brutally honest as we can be. It's tough, man. I go on Arkansas radio on Hit That Line every other week. And I've had this discussion with my guys, Phil Elson and Matt Jones, and like the upside of how this year could play out. Like best case scenario that we're talking about is like if you get beyond 7-5, like tell me I'm crazy for thinking that anything more than 7-5 is just like it's silly talk for Arkansas. And I think Arkansas fans know it.
When you say it like that too, though, I mean, they're 7-5. Does Pittman keep his job at 7-5? Like
7-5 would be enough to keep Sam Pittman around.
Yeah.
7-5 would be enough.
Okay.
But if you're coming up short in these games that we saw last year, if that plays out in any sense whatsoever, yeah, I mean, I think that's like you can't have these Mississippi State type losses, of course, that everybody talks about. And there's nothing wrong with going into a year. I know this is a crazy concept. This is a really crazy concept. There's nothing wrong with going into a year saying we don't have a path. It's not there. It's not there. We're not built like that. Even if you're in year 5 with a head coach, as Arkansas is, like there's not necessarily that great shame in admitting that. And sometimes you set yourself up a little bit better if you can acknowledge like what 7-5 is. And I think the vast majority of fans do acknowledge that. I do think there is a lot of understanding of the teams that just don't have that path, that can't even just have Godzilla take over and stomp SEC teams, and Godzilla needs additional help. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but it does probably feel really depressing to say that as an Arkansas fan after the year of athletics that have been.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of like the dichotomy of it, right? Which is that, I mean, to me, like at this point, like 7-5, right? So I don't really think, I don't want to do the cop out, which is like, oh, like it depends on how you get to 7-5. Because 7-5, like, but to your point, 8-4 feels incredibly like extension level impressive, and 6-6 feels like you're in trouble. So you got to really find a way to get to those 7 wins. And so, yeah, I this is an incredible crop of pitch me's. Like I think all of these are real, accurate. There's like a funny one, but it's real. You know what I'm saying? Like, and like to be honest with y'all, like I've talked here about this. I've talked to Marler about this. Like I don't see it for LSU this year. Just to be honest, as good as they might be, because here's the deal that we haven't talked about. There's a ton of really good teams this year. So like for LSU, like they would need Mizzou to struggle, just for instance, right? Because they don't have to play them head to head. Like they would need to be okay. Well, Bama is not as good as people thought. Ole Miss you beat head to head. You know what I'm saying? Like it would just take 8 different contingencies for this current LSU team with this new defense to get there. So like that's the thing is like this year in the SEC, unless you are Georgia, it's like that second spot being kind of auto open is like rough because it doesn't even feel like it's like the divisions. Like we're trying to go the way that Alabama was almost like auto locked in the West for like 8 years there, 10 years. It feels like Georgia would be that in the East going forward. So the divisionless thing doesn't really matter at this point. It's really just like, okay, well either way, it gives some team. What's up?
I don't know. I kind of push back on that a little bit because what if we're talking about, and I don't know that this is going to play out. Okay, I don't. But if we get to a place where there's a 10-2 team in the SEC who goes 6-2 in conference play, and again TBD on the 9-game conference schedule, the way that this is kind of setting up now with some of these teams like Georgia and Florida having these matchup cancellations, it does appear like the SEC does want to move forward with the 9-game conference schedule starting in 2026. TBD on all that. Okay, but if we're talking about teams that can go 6-2 divisionless, right, in a divisionless SEC and get to Atlanta, that I think changes the conversation a lot about who thinks they have a path and who doesn't. If it's still every single year 8-0, 7-1, you lose that second conference game, you're done, and you don't have that division, that favorable division to fall back on, then I think that we're talking about this in a little bit of a different way, not as much like, oh yeah, it's just going to be Georgia, it's going to be Alabama, Texas, LSU at the top, and there's a little bit more room that isn't so. It's just not quite as defined, I think, as it once was.
Yeah, well, I'll say it like this, right? So it's almost like Georgia would need to be disappointing or need the opposite of help to not be in the SEC championship. So we can kind of admit to that, right? Like they have the track record. They're going to get like kind of a little bit of the polling. Not that it matters as much anymore, but they're going to get that love, and they've been in these big games. So like things would need to go pretty wrong for them. Talking about like injuries or like suddenly the offensive line's bad. We've seen that they started Alabama last year. Yeah, sometimes that just happens. It would take something like that to get them out of the conversation. But the inverse of that would be like, okay, number 2 in the East, the old East would be like, I guess Mizzou this year coming up.
Mizzou would be number 2 in the East. Tennessee fans would probably push back on that. I'd say that game in Columbia.
Not after last year.
Yeah.
If you're pushing back on that, buddy, you got to start pushing back on Mizzou a little bit better. Anyway, so point being, like, Mizzou would have to have Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, even like an LSU fall off a little bit to get them into a dual Old East matchup. You see what I'm saying? Like because Georgia is what they are right now and Kirby Smart is not leaving anytime soon, it just kind of resets the deck where you are just playing for the old Alabama spot, whereas Alabama, because if we had, let's say we had 10 more years of Saban, but we also had Kirby, the SEC would have just been locked like dang near every, like maybe one every 3 or 4 years a team would sneak through, which is what we've seen in the last like 5 or 6 years. But now it's like, well, as long as one team is auto-locked, the East hasn't quite gotten to that point because, not being mean, Florida's down, right? So Florida's that team that won it in 2020. They're that team that we've seen in the East enough to where it would matter. So yeah, I think that Mizzou would be a surprise because they haven't made it since they dang near first got here, right? Like it was the 2 kind of back to back. I think they struggled for a year and then I think they went 2 back to back. It was
13 and 14. Yeah, with those years. I still think the number to get to in the 8-game conference schedule will be 7. Get to 7 SEC wins, be 7-1 in conference play. You're going to have a chance if you're 6-2. That it's like I don't know that you can necessarily bank on that. In the same way that I think the new college football playoff, the number to get to is 10 wins. That's the all important number. That's going to make such a big difference. These were good. I think the best pitch is. I mean, that Vandy one is so good. It's so good, but. The actual directions for Georgia what happens is just I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree with that. That is the one that I agree with the most. I like that.
This is the first time I've said this. I think this is a tie because each person had to answer for their own team. So I think that this is a 10 of 10 Vandy answer and a 10 of 10 Athens answer. I couldn't pick. I started with the first one, but then like us going from like, they're kind of locked in to just like, here's a specific direction is so funny. And then the other side is like, here's the strangest thing you've ever heard. Get ready.
Okay, you heard it here first. Saturday Down South podcast endorses Vandy and Georgia in the SEC championship.
Heck yeah.
Different paths to get there. Different
paths. Add as many playoff teams as you want. We got a split natty right here. We're bringing back. We're going back to tradition.
Let's do it. Let's get newspapers to vote on this, and these 2 teams will be the deciding factors. Okay, we're gonna have a lot of coverage from SEC Media Days next week. I am so pumped. We've got some great things in the works that we're going to be able to do. So we will have pods next week. We're going to be recording on Monday and Wednesday. So that means you will have pods that hit your feed on Tuesday and Thursday. If you have not, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the STS Pod, at Set Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.